Hey there, class. This is Mr. Briggs, and today we're going to keep on working with tinkercad, a really great tool. This time what we're going to do is we're going to use tinkercad to make a design of something in real life, something made to scale. Now, we talked about scale drawings and how scale drawings show something that is half the size or a third the size or a tenth the size, and with the US system that's really difficult. Because when we do something that is feet and inches and we want to make a small model of it, it's really hard to kind of get a gauge of how big it really is. What we're going to do with tinkercad today is make a scale model of a locker. The lockers here at school are kind of tricky, they're kind of tough to use. We would think we could design a better one. So your job is going to be to design a locker that is made to scale. So what we're going to do is make it 1/10 the size of the real locker. So instead of, well, actually I think it's going to be, 1/10 the size. So instead of 150 centimeters tall, it's going to be 15 millimeters tall. And when you are done, you are going to get a nice little 3D designed version of a locker that looks like this. Now this is one that I printed out myself using the 3D printer. And it's not perfect, but it does show you kind of how it looks. So let's go ahead and design a new locker for this school. The first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you're in tinkercad. When you're in tinkercad, make sure you're logged into your school email, which is a Google type email. And what we're going to do is hit sign in. And once again, when we get to the sign in page, we are not going to put in our email. We're going to click this button that says sign in using social providers. We are going to hit Google because we are a Google school. And then in just a moment, it should be logging us in. Once we're logged in, I have to tell it I want to use my school email and not my home email. Once we're logged in, you can do it. We get into our tinkercad dashboard. Hopefully you get something that looks similar to this. If not, make sure you click the little tinkercad button up here, and that'll take you right to your dashboard. And what we're going to do is create a new design. And once we have our new design, it takes a little bit because this is all on the internet. We're going to have a work plane right here. And what we want to think about whenever we're making a design is all shapes are made up of simpler shapes. If we think of shapes as a recipe, just like when you made your birdhouse was bunches of rectangles arranged in just the right way, we're going to be making a locker. And a locker is just a series of boxes and other shapes. So the first thing we want to do is think about the outside of our locker. Now this is when using the mouse is going to be really useful. Otherwise you can use Shift, the Shift key on your keyboard, and a 2-finger grab to move things up or down because it's going to get kind of tall. You're going to want to make sure you have a really good idea of how to move your work plane around. Using your mouse buttons is really useful for that, or touching your screen will actually rotate your work plane too. So let's go ahead and throw a box in there. Now this box is not the size of our locker. Our locker is a very specific size. If we send this design, imagine we're sending this design to the locker factory. The locker factory is all the way in Alaska or something. And the locker factory, they are going to make exactly what we want, but they're going to make it 10 times bigger. So if we are off by a little bit, it's not going to fit in the holes for the lockers at school. So we need to make sure it is the exact size. You can't really guess with this. We're going to click on the corner here. Instead of 20 millimeters, we're going to make it 40 millimeters. Instead of 20 millimeters here, it's going to be 40 millimeters. Our locker's footprint, the basic part of our locker here, is 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters. We're making it 40 millimeters by 40 millimeters. It's a lot easier to do with millimeters than it is with inches. But now we need to make our locker taller. And in real life, our locker is 1.5 meters tall or 150 centimeters, we're going to make this 150 millimeters tall. And like you see, it got really tall. It got taller than I could really see from this. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and maybe look at it from kind of a three-quarter view, and maybe move it into a position where I could see it really well. Okay? Now what I have to do is I need to hollow out my locker. I need to basically make a hole. And if you remember from our last assignment, the one on making a box, I'm just making a box, but I'm making it stand up. So I'm going to click my locker, and I'm going to hit the duplicate button up here in the corner. Or I could hit Control D. And it doesn't look like it did anything, but if I click and drag, I now have an exact copy of my locker. I need to make this, though, a little bit smaller. So I'm going to make it 35 millimeters deep and 35 millimeters wide. And I am going to make it just a little shorter, maybe 145 millimeters tall. So now it's just a little smaller. It should fit inside there real nice. Now, the first thing I need to do, though, is I need to make that a hole. And you can either use your mouse. I like to use my arrow keys and kind of just fine-tune it and make sure you look at it from different points of view, different angles, okay? Because sometimes it can get goofy on you. Now that to me looks like it's pretty well centered. It's looking pretty good. The only problem is if you look at the bottom here, my bottom is right against the bottom. If I group this right now, my locker won't have a bottom, and I want it to have a bottom. So I am going to move my view up here. I'm going to find the little cone, and I'm going to lift my locker up maybe 2 millimeters. And now, as you can see, on the bottom there, I've got a little bit of a gap right there where my floor will be. Okay, I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. With a mouse, this is so much easier. There's some mice at the front of the room if you ever need them. And now I've got everything kind of where I want it. I'm going to like maybe turn it around a little bit. It looks good. Nothing's sticking out in a weird way. I feel safe. I'm going to select everything. Got my two shapes right there, and I'm going to group them by hitting the group button or Control G. And now I should have a locker right there, right? Cool. Or at least I have the shell of the locker. Well, I'm not done yet. I need to have a shelf for my locker. So I'm going to drag in another box. And it helps to know what our dimensions are. Well, you know, remember your locker is how many millimeters wide? 40, right? So I'm going to make this 40 wide, and I'm going to make it 40 deep. But this is a really thick shelf. It's 20 millimeters, which is going to turn into 20 centimeters, which is pretty chunky. I'm going to make it 5. I can either drag it down or I can type in 5. And now I've got basically a pizza box, right? Well, I'm going to take that pizza box and I'm going to put it inside my locker. And it pays to kind of have a really good view with this. If you do it right from the front, it's not going to work. If you do it from the top, it's a little bit better. Like I said, I like to do it kind of at a 45 here. And I'm going to use my arrow keys. And I am going to just very carefully make sure that that pizza box is lined up. And I'm looking at it from lots of different angles. Looks good. I'm going to grab the arrow, the little cone there on the pizza box, and lift it up. It might pay to move your thing around a little bit, zoom out, but I'm lifting that pizza box up until it's at a good place, okay? That looks like a pretty good place. It's starting to look like a locker now, right? Well, I'm going to select everything. Well, before I do that, though, I'm going to look at it from all angles, because here's what happens. If you don't look at it from all angles, I don't know if you can tell, but when I printed this, right, when I printed my mine, it looked really good, but that's because I was only looking at it from the front. I did not realize that I had a little bit sticking out the side there, right? That's no good. And if you look right here, it's sticking out too far that way too. So I'm not going to be able to close my door. So actually, this isn't the best model in the world, but whatever. Let's make sure our model doesn't have that problem. I'm looking at it from all of these different angles, and that shelf looks like it's really good. I'm going to select everything and group it. And now I've got the basic frame of my locker. But right now it's just a locker, right? We need to have a door for our locker. Okay? Now the door for our locker is also going to be pretty simple to do if we think a few steps ahead. Now, the locker I'm going to make as a whole separate item, and then I'm going to bring it together, because there's a couple of things we need to put on the locker. We need to make sure we have the locker door, and we need to make sure we've got these ventilation holes so that your gym shoes don't get too stinky. Here we go. I'm going to drag a box in. Oh, there we go. I'm going to drag a box in, and I'm going to take that box, and I'm going to make my door. My door needs to be 40 millimeters wide. I don't want it 20 millimeters wide. That's too thick of a door. So I'm going to make it 5 millimeters wide. So now I've got this skinny tall box, this skinny tall rectangle. I need to make it taller though. So I'm clicking on the little box here for height, and I'm putting in 150 millimeters tall. Now I have a 150 millimeter tall door. It looks like it's going to fit, but I'm not going to group it yet. I'm not going to attach it because I need to put the vents on, and the vents are going to be much easier to put on, and any numbers you want to put on there are going to be a lot easier to put on. Any other features you want to put on, like a little handle or whatever, put the door on last, would be my advice. So let me show you what I'm going to do. To get the vents on my door, I'm going to drag a box in here, and this box is already a hole, but I need to make it vent size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of look at get an angle where you're looking at it from the side here. And make sure it's only about 5 high. And right now I've got a hole that's 5 high. Let me zoom in here so you can see a little bit better view of it. Oh, there we go. It's 5 high. It's only 20 wide. I probably want to make it at least 30 wide so it fits my locker a little bit better. And as you can see, I'm just looking at it from all these different angles, so I'm sure that that's in the middle. And it's really important that your hole goes entirely through the door. You're looking at a pizza box going through the door. Okay? Now, the pizza box is centered where I want it. It's the right size. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that up using the cone here. And again, I might have to zoom out a little bit, move my view around, and I'm going to put that where I want to put it. Okay? Now, do I have to do that again and again and again to make like 3 or 4 vents? No! I can hit the duplicate button and duplicate what I just did and drag it up a little bit. And this is a really cool trick for tinkercad. You made that second vent there. If I hit duplicate, it'll put a third vent in, automatically spaced out. So now, here I have my door with my vents in there. I do not want to move this. If I move this, now the vents are just going to be sitting there floating. So, I can always hit undo, remember. I'm going to just select the door and just select the vents. Those holes for the vents. That's all I'm selecting. And I'm hitting group. Now, I have a new shape. I've got this door all set up and ready to go. So I'm going to take my door, attach it to my locker, and I'm going to use the rotate buttons here to rotate my door just a little bit, stick it on there, and look at that. I got a beautiful door sitting all cool and attached to my locker. And once that's where I want it, I can group the whole thing, and now I have one locker exactly the way I want it, right? Pretty cool. Well, what can I do now to make this a better locker? What can I do? This gets me a 3 right now. I want to get a 4. What could I do to get a 4? Well, I could go from basic shapes here to text, and I could find the letter J. Take the letter J, and I'm going to rotate the letter J 90 degrees. Come on, close enough. And I'm going to put it inside my locker raise it up until it's where I want it, and now I have a hook inside my locker. Maybe I want to make the vents a different shape. Maybe instead of rectangles, I want them to be circles. I want them to look really cool. Maybe I want to have my name on the outside. Maybe I want to put a backpack, a lunchbox on the inside. Maybe I want to put a security lock on it. Maybe I want to have one of those things that you put in the code, like a secret agent, inside the locker. All kinds of cool stuff. Maybe I want little drawers and stuff to keep my cell phone. After you've done this, after you've made a locker that is 40 by 40 by 150, it's up to you how you want to customize it. It's up to you to what you want to do for a 4. Okay? You are free to do whatever you want once you've proven that you can make a scale model. Okay? So, once again, to prove that you've made this, make sure you take a screenshot of it, and on a Chromebook, that is hitting Control and the little button above the 6. That will take a screenshot of your of what's on your screen, and you will be able to turn that in. Okay? So, remember, you can always rewind this, pause it, watch it again, whatever you want. Have fun and work hard.